A Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln, written by Harry Montgomery, narrated by Cedar Reyes. Chapter 1: The Rise of Ambition. Abraham Lincoln's early years were marked by hardship, poverty, and a relentless drive to rise above his circumstances. Born in a one-room log cabin in Kentucky in 1809, Lincoln experienced the difficulties of frontier life. His family moved frequently, and his formal education was limited to less than a year's worth of school. Yet, even in these early years, he developed a deep curiosity and love for learning. He read whatever books he could find, often borrowing them from neighbors, and was known to read by firelight late into the night. This hunger for knowledge became a central part of his identity and would later feed into his political ambitions. Lincoln's entry into politics began in Illinois, where he settled in the town of New Salem. There, he earned a reputation for honesty, storytelling, and a sharp intellect. He first ran for the state legislature in 1832 and lost, but he tried again 2 years later and won. As a member of the Illinois state legislature, he began to develop his political skills and established a clear stance on important issues such as internal improvements and economic development. He aligned himself with the Whig Party, inspired by Henry Clay's vision of a strong national economy. During this time, Lincoln also began to study law, teaching himself the subject and eventually becoming a successful lawyer in Springfield, where he built a respectable career and deepened his connections. Though he was gaining traction in law and state politics, Lincoln's ambition reached further. He served a single term in the U.S. House of Representatives in the late 1840s, during which he opposed the Mexican-American War and supported internal improvements. However, his criticism of the war was unpopular, and after his term, he faded from national politics for a while. Yet, Lincoln was far from finished. The moral and political debate over slavery rekindled his interest in national affairs. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed new territories to decide for themselves whether to allow slavery, outraged Lincoln and pulled him back into the political arena. Lincoln's moral convictions began to shape his public voice more powerfully. He believed slavery was a fundamental wrong, and though he did not yet call for immediate abolition, he argued fiercely against its expansion. His debates with Senator Stephen Douglas, particularly during the Illinois Senate race of 1858, brought him national attention. While he lost the election, his eloquence and clarity impressed many in the emerging Republican Party. By the end of the decade, Lincoln had transformed himself from a self-taught frontier lawyer into a national political figure. His rise was not meteoric, but it was steady, built on resilience, ambition, and a keen understanding of people. His ability to connect with both elite politicians and ordinary citizens made him stand out in an era dominated by powerful, established figures. The foundation of his political genius was laid in these years that revealed not only his personal determination, but also his evolving vision for a more unified and just nation. Young Lincoln's early hardships and aspirations. Abraham Lincoln's early life was characterized by a series of challenges that shaped his character and instilled in him an enduring ambition to rise above the constraints of his humble beginnings. Born into a struggling frontier family, Lincoln experienced severe economic hardship from an early age. His family's constant financial instability, combined with the demanding realities of rural life, left a deep impression on the young boy. Life in the frontier was not only about the struggle for material comfort, but also about confronting the harsh realities of nature, isolation, and a society with limited resources. These formative experiences forced Lincoln to develop a resilient spirit and a keen sense of determination, qualities that would define his future political and personal endeavors. Despite the many obstacles, young Lincoln was never discouraged by his surroundings. He possessed an insatiable curiosity and a deep thirst for knowledge which set him apart from his peers. With few formal educational opportunities available, he resorted to self-education, frequently reading borrowed books whenever he could. This self-driven pursuit of learning was both a refuge and a catalyst for his later achievements. Through his independent study, Lincoln not only acquired an impressive understanding of literature and law, but also developed a framework for critical thinking that would become crucial during his political career. The struggles of his childhood lit a spark within him, turning every hardship into fuel for his self-improvement and resolve. Living in an environment where poverty was prevalent, Lincoln learned early on the value of hard work and perseverance. He took on various odd jobs to help support his family and to contribute to his education. Whether it was working on the family farm, hauling logs, or assisting in local businesses, these early experiences instilled in him a work ethic that was both practical and introspective. In the face of adversity, Lincoln's determination to better his life grew stronger. His modest upbringing and the absence of a privileged background provided a contrasting backdrop to the power and prestige of established political leaders. This contrast became a driving force behind his aspirations to engage in public life and eventually lead the nation through one of its most turbulent periods. In the midst of personal and financial struggles, young Lincoln also cultivated an idealism that was rare for someone of his background. He became aware of the deeper issues facing the country, including the divide between classes and the moral questions about liberty and justice. These observations sowed the seeds of his belief in equality and democracy. Even as a young man, he recognized that education and self-improvement were keys to unlocking not only personal success, but also the advancement of society. This early conviction guided him through years of uncertainty and hardship, laying the groundwork for the political career that would eventually steer the nation towards unity and reform. Lincoln's early hardships were not just episodes of misfortune. They were crucibles that forged his enduring vision and steadfast determination. His journey from a life marked by deprivation to a path of self-education and political ambition is a testament to the power of resilience and hope in the face of adversity. Political beginnings in Illinois. Abraham Lincoln's political journey in Illinois began as a modest but determined foray into the arena of local politics, where he steadily built a reputation for integrity, perseverance, and thoughtful public service. Settling in Illinois allowed Lincoln to immerse himself in the issues faced by a rapidly growing frontier state, forging connections with everyday citizens and local leaders alike. In these early years, his passion for justice and his talent for clear, plain speaking began to set him apart from other local politicians who were often more entrenched in tradition than innovative ideas. Living in a state still in the process of establishing its identity, Lincoln discovered that the challenges of frontier life provided the perfect backdrop for a political career built on hard work and self-made credentials. He was drawn to local offices that addressed common concerns such as infrastructure development, law enforcement, and community welfare. Lincoln understood that every small success in these offices would pave the way for broader opportunities on the state and national stage. This commitment to public service gave him a platform to express his ideas about economic growth, equitable justice, and the expansion of basic civil liberties. During his early political career, Lincoln was noted for his humble beginnings and self-taught knowledge. His lack of formal education, which could have been seen as a disadvantage, became a symbol of his determination to overcome personal obstacles. His ability to communicate in a straightforward manner resonated with a wide audience that was eager for leaders who embodied the very values they held dear. Lincoln's involvement in local politics was characterized by an earnest desire to improve the lives of those around him. Whether he was campaigning for legislative reforms or advocating for improved transportation routes to support economic activity, He consistently demonstrated a willingness to listen to the needs of his community and work collaboratively towards solutions. Lincoln's ascent was marked by numerous small victories that, in time, allowed him to gain significant influence in the state. His legal career, which ran parallel to his political activities, further enhanced his reputation as a practical and principled leader. As he argued cases in local courts and navigated the complex intersection of law and everyday life, Lincoln sharpened his ability to reason through difficult problems. This dual engagement with politics and law imbued him with the analytical skills necessary to understand the broader implications of policy decisions, paving the way for a more ambitious future on the national stage. In the political climate of Illinois, which was characterized by vigorous debates about the direction of the state's growth and the expansion of economic opportunity, Lincoln established himself as a man of principle, willing to face contentious issues head-on. His early political beginnings in Illinois were shaped by debates on internal improvements that balanced rural needs with the ambitions of urban centers. These experiences provided him with invaluable insights into the workings of democracy at the grassroots level and a deep appreciation for the importance of civic engagement. Lincoln's formative years in Illinois laid a strong foundation for the political genius he would later display on the national stage. Moral convictions and the foundation of leadership. From early on, Abraham Lincoln exhibited a deep commitment to principles that would eventually define his leadership style. His moral convictions were not merely abstract ideals, but concrete guides that influenced his decisions in both personal and public life. Growing up in a challenging environment, Lincoln was acutely aware of the limitations imposed by poverty and the harsh realities of frontier existence. These experiences molded his belief in self-reliance, integrity, and fairness, qualities that later became the cornerstones of his approach to governance. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Lincoln's perspective was shaped not only by political ambition, but by an unwavering sense of what was just, a vision that would help steer the nation through its most turbulent times. Lincoln's philosophy evolved out of everyday encounters with injustice and hardship. In witnessing the struggles of working people, he developed an empathy and concern for those marginalized by society. This concern informed his advocacy for equal opportunities and fair treatment, both of which would later be reflected in his policies and speeches. His commitment to these values was evident in his willingness to stand against popular opinion when necessary, even when doing so meant standing alone against entrenched interests. By holding steadfast to his beliefs, Lincoln not only earned the respect of his peers, but also laid the groundwork for a leadership style that balanced pragmatism with idealism. A significant component of Lincoln's moral framework was his profound belief in the inherent dignity and worth of every individual. This belief was critical in shaping his approach to the institution of slavery, where he saw the moral failings of a nation built on inequality. Although he was initially cautious in his public expressions, preferring to work within the political system to gradually address the issue, his personal conviction never wavered. His internal moral compass was a constant reminder that the expansion of slavery was an affront to the founding principles of liberty and equality. This introspection and commitment to justice later coalesced into policies that would redefine the nation's stance on human rights and equality during the most challenging period in American history. Lincoln's leadership was also distinguished by his humility and willingness to admit limitations. His moral convictions provided a framework for self-assessment and the continuous quest for improvement. Believing that no individual held all the answers, he was open to counsel and debate, a quality that is rare among those in power. This humility enabled him to build a diverse team of advisors and cabinet members, many of whom held differing opinions, yet all were united by the shared goal of achieving justice and progress for the nation. His ability to navigate complex political landscapes by balancing conflicting interests while staying true to his moral ideals became a defining trait of his presidency. The synthesis of personal hardship, ethical fortitude, and pragmatic leadership underpinned Lincoln's rise as a transformative figure in American history. His moral convictions served as the bedrock of a leadership model that valued truth, compassion, and perseverance. In a time when the nation was deeply divided, his steadfast commitment to these principles not only inspired others, but also provided it a guiding light during periods of profound uncertainty and change. This melding of high ideals with practical governance created a legacy that continues to influence perceptions of effective leadership today. Chapter 2: Contenders for Power. In the turbulent landscape of American politics during the mid-19th century, Abraham Lincoln found himself competing against a formidable array of rivals whose ambitions and ideologies challenged his own emerging vision for the nation. This period was defined by intense debates over the expansion of slavery, rapid economic transformation, and the evolving identity of a country in flux. Lincoln's competitors were seasoned politicians with diverse backgrounds and well-established networks of support, making the contest for political power one of both substance and strategy. His journey through the competitive arena was marked by an unwavering commitment to his principles and a willingness to confront adversaries head-on. Lincoln's rivals were more than mere opponents. They represented competing interpretations of the country's future. Among them, prominent figures such as William Seward, Salmon Chase, and Edward Bates showcased different aspects of political experience and ambition. Seward, with his extensive experience and persuasive oratory, appealed to many as a visionary with a forward-thinking approach to national policy. Chase, known for his legal acumen and vigorous stance against the expansion of slavery, brought an intellectual rigor that resonated with supporters seeking reform. Bates, respected for his diplomatic skills and steady administrative hand, embodied a more pragmatic approach to governance. Each of these men had built careers on the promise of change and the transformation of a divided America, setting the stage for a contest where ideas would clash as fiercely as personalities. Within this contentious environment, Lincoln's rise was characterized by his distinct ability to leverage personal integrity and a deep moral resolve. His campaign for political power was not solely a race for office, but a battle for the soul of the nation. In dialogues and public debates, the contrast between Lincoln's humble origins and the sophisticated political careers of his rivals created a narrative that appealed to both common citizens and more discerning political observers. His understated charm, coupled with a relentless pursuit of truth and justice, allowed him to connect with audiences who felt alienated by the complexities of entrenched political interests. This connection was instrumental in establishing a political foothold that would allow him to navigate through an intricate network of alliances and rivalries. The competition also highlighted a broader struggle within the political system itself, as emerging factions began to challenge the established order. Political alliances were in constant flux, and public sentiment shifted with each new development on the national stage. Amid this shifting political terrain, Lincoln's approach was notably unconventional. He acknowledged the strengths of his rivals while remaining steadfast in his resolve to promote policies that prioritized national unity and moral clarity. His willingness to form alliances across traditional divides earned him both admiration and enmity, and his candid manner of addressing contentious issues served to distinguish him from those who would resort to sectional and partisan rhetoric. As the contest for power intensified, the differing visions for America came into sharper focus. Each contender brought forward proposals and ideals aimed at securing a prosperous future. Yet, it was Lincoln's fusion of pragmatic politics with enduring ethical principles that would ultimately influence the course of the nation. This period of political rivalry and fierce competition laid the groundwork for a profound transformation in American political life and paved the way for the revolutionary changes that would follow in the coming years. Introduction to Lincoln's rivals, Seward, Chase, Bates. During the height of political transformation in mid-19th century America, Abraham Lincoln's ascent was marked by fierce competition with peers whose reputations and ambitions resonated with a nation at a crossroads. Among these rivals, three figures stand out for their dynamic contributions and contrasting visions: William Seward, Salmon Chase, and Edward Bates. Each of these men brought unique political acumen, ideological fervor, and a steadfast commitment to reform, forming an intricate backdrop against which Lincoln's own political narrative was penned. William Seward, with his deep experience in national and international affairs, emerged as a leading contender whose vision for America was characterized by a bold, forward-thinking perspective. Seward's career was built upon a keen understanding of diplomacy and a passionate commitment to the abolitionist cause. His robust advocacy for modernizing the nation's institutions and expanding the reach of American influence on the global stage earned him widespread recognition among intellectuals and reformers alike. Seward's eloquence in addressing the pressing issues of the day allowed him to propose sweeping reforms that captured the imagination of a nation eager for change. His stature in political circles was unmatched, and he became a natural foil to Lincoln's modest beginnings, representing a formidable alternative in the eyes of those who believed in rapid transformation driven by well-established statesmen. Salmon Chase, another formidable rival, was celebrated for his legal expertise and staunch opposition to the expansion of slavery. Throughout his career, Chase demonstrated an unwavering dedication to justice and reform in a period when the moral fabric of the nation was deeply questioned. His incisive legal mind and principled stance on civil rights resonated with voters who recognized the inherent injustice of a society that allowed for continued oppression. Chase's political journey was defined by a series of high-profile appointments and influential roles in government, each underscoring his commitment to aligning policy with ethical imperatives. Through his vigorous debates and public addresses, Chase cultivated a reputation as an advocate for a more inclusive and equitable society, contrasting sharply with traditional power structures that sought to preserve outdated hierarchies. Edward Bates, the third rival, added another layer of complexity to the political rivalry with his unique brand of pragmatism and administrative discipline. As a respected figure in legal and governmental circles, Bates was recognized for his steady hand in managing complex political and bureaucratic challenges. His approach to governance was marked by a cautious yet determined pursuit of reform, seeking to balance idealistic aspirations with the practical necessities of running a government. Bates's influence in legislative processes and judicial reforms illustrated his capacity to navigate the intricacies of policymaking, making him an indispensable part of the broader conversation on progress and stability in the country. The political careers of Seward, Chase, and Bates illustrated different facets of leadership that were critical during a period of national uncertainty and change. Their rivalries with Lincoln, characterized by both shared visions and pointed differences, set the stage for a political dialogue that would shape the future of the nation. In their own ways, each rival challenged prevailing norms and pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible, thereby enriching the political landscape of their time and providing a vigorous counterpoint to the emerging legacy of Lincoln. The road to the Republican nomination. Abraham Lincoln's journey to secure the Republican nomination was neither a sudden breakthrough nor a result of mere chance. It was a long and arduous process forged by a combination of political resilience, calculated alliances, and steadfast commitment to reforming a nation deeply divided by the issue of slavery. As the political landscape shifted dramatically with the disintegration of previous party structures and the emergence of the Republican Party, Lincoln's persistence and gradual accumulation of experience placed him in a favorable position to lead the movement for change. The transformation of the political scene following the Kansas-Nebraska Act created an environment where many traditional party allegiances began to fracture. The act, which allowed new territories to determine the legality of slavery by popular sovereignty, sparked fierce debates and forced politicians to take clear stances on the institution. In this period of ideological realignment, the emergent Republican Party coalesced around a platform opposed to the expansion of slavery, and Lincoln, a vocal critic of its spread, found himself at the heart of this evolving debate. His previous experience in the Illinois legislature and his eloquence on matters of economic development and social justice helped him secure a significant following among those dissatisfied with the old political order. Lincoln's reputation grew steadily as he engaged with local party leaders, participated in debates, and authored speeches that articulated a vision for a future free of the divisive institution. He was careful to position himself as both a principled candidate and a pragmatic politician. Although his rhetoric consistently underscored the moral failings of slavery, he combined that with thoughtful proposals aimed at strengthening national infrastructure and stimulating economic growth. This balanced message enabled him to build bridges between various factions within the newly forming party, laying the groundwork for broader support on a national level. In addition to his public engagements, Lincoln worked diligently behind the scenes to forge alliances with key figures in the Republican movement. Relationships built on trust and mutual respect allowed him to gather endorsements from influential party members who believed in his capabilities as a unifier and reformer. His methodical approach to political strategy, which involved gaining incremental victories in local elections and building a network of supporters, ultimately became a critical asset on the national stage. As the party navigated the turbulent waters of political transformation, Lincoln's reputation as an honest and determined leader provided a stabilizing force that resonated with voters. The culmination of these efforts was Lincoln's ability to articulate a coherent narrative that addressed both the immediate political crises and the long-term vision for the United States. His emphasis on unity, progress, and the preservation of national ideals struck a chord with many who felt that the time had come for a leader capable of bridging regional divides. In a period marked by intense ideological battles and shifting allegiances, Lincoln's road to the Republican nomination was defined by his capacity to remain true to his beliefs while adapting to the rapidly changing political environment. His steady rise, underpinned by both moral conviction and strategic acumen, ultimately secured his place as the preeminent candidate of the Republican Party during a critical juncture in American history. Lincoln's strategy and unexpected victory. Abraham Lincoln's approach to securing his political future was a tapestry of careful planning, adaptability, and persuasive communication that culminated in an unexpected victory, reshaping the course of American political history. His strategy was predicated on the belief that authenticity, moral clarity, and a willingness to forge unlikely alliances could overcome the entrenched power of traditional political factions. Even as the country was gripped by intense debates over slavery and regional identity, Lincoln pursued a path marked by rigorous self-education and a steadfast commitment to both principle and pragmatism. From the early stages of his political engagement, Lincoln recognized that an appeal to both reason and emotion was paramount in winning over a broad constituency. He cultivated a persona that was both relatable and principled, positioning himself as a man who had risen from humble beginnings. This narrative resonated deeply with voters who were disillusioned by the elitist tendencies of the established political order. His speeches and writings, known for their clarity and an absence of rhetorical flourish, conveyed a sense of sincere purpose that distinguished him from rivals who often relied on ornamented rhetoric. Lincoln's ability to articulate a vision rooted in common sense and moral responsibility was a critical element of his strategy. In parallel with crafting a compelling personal narrative, Lincoln worked tirelessly to build a robust network of supporters across various segments of society. He leveraged relationships with local political figures, emerging Republican leaders, and disaffected former members of other parties to establish a formidable coalition. This network provided him with not only the grassroots support necessary for electoral success, but also the intellectual backing to refine his positions on contentious issues such as economic development and the containment of slavery. Lincoln's approach was pragmatic. He recognized that political victory required both ideological consistency and the ability to compromise where necessary in order to enact meaningful reforms. As the political landscape evolved, Lincoln's strategy adapted to shifting public sentiments and a changing national agenda. His measured stance against the expansion of slavery, combined with his proposals for internal improvements and infrastructure development, appealed to a diverse array of constituents. This versatility allowed him to break through the polarized debates of the era, capturing the attention of individuals who might have otherwise adhered to more radical positions. His unexpected victory was not the result of any single policy stance or moment of populist appeal, but rather a culmination of years spent honing a reputation as an honest broker committed to national unity. Ultimately, Lincoln's unforeseen rise to prominence can be attributed to his capacity for thoughtful adaptation in the face of adversity. His relentless focus on the broader ideals of national progress and democratic values, even amid fierce partisan strife, won him supporters on both sides of the political divide. While his rivals represented distinct visions for the country's future, Lincoln emerged as a unifying figure capable of bridging differences and articulating an inclusive vision for progress. His victory, rooted in a pragmatic mixture of moral certainty and strategic foresight, transformed him into a symbol of hope during one of the nation's most turbulent periods and set the stage for the leadership that would eventually guide the country through its greatest existential challenges. Chapter 3: Assembling the Cabinet. In the midst of political chaos and national turmoil, Abraham Lincoln understood that the success of his presidency would depend on his ability to surround himself with talented and determined individuals who could weather the storms of political division. The process of assembling his cabinet was more than a routine appointment. It was a deliberate strategy to create a team that balanced conflicting views, harnessed the best of each member's strengths, and ultimately advanced the cause of preserving the Union. Lincoln faced the daunting challenge of unifying a fractured political landscape, which required him to embrace diversity of thought and reconcile long-standing rivalries. His approach to cabinet selection was guided by a belief that honest debate and a range of perspectives were essential to sound decision-making during one of the nation's most critical periods. Lincoln was acutely aware that his cabinet members would come from various political backgrounds and hold differing opinions on issues that had polarized the country. His strategy was to turn these potential conflicts into strengths by choosing individuals who, despite their disagreements, were committed to the overarching mission of maintaining the Union and advancing necessary reforms. By appointing rivals from his own political party, including men whose views he sometimes found at odds with his own, Lincoln signaled his willingness to consider all ideas and his commitment to placing the country's interests above personal ambition. This inclusive attitude fostered an environment in which even vigorous debate could lead to the development of robust policies that addressed the pressing challenges of the era. Lincoln's choices for his cabinet were not made lightly, as he carefully considered each candidate's expertise, past performance, and ability to contribute to the national agenda. He sought men who were not only adept in their respective fields, but who also possessed the resilience and adaptability required to serve effectively in a government operating under immense strain. The process was marked by extensive consultations, long discussions, and a keen sense of the delicate political balance that needed to be maintained. Despite the risk of internal strife, Lincoln's insistence on including formidable opponents created a sense of accountability and shared purpose. His selections represented a microcosm of the country itself, with diverse viewpoints coalescing around a common goal. This method of assembling the cabinet was both innovative and pragmatic. Lincoln recognized that a leader must not shy away from dissenting opinions, but rather harness them to create policies that were comprehensive and inclusive. His willingness to integrate former rivals into the inner circle not only minimized the possibility of factional gridlock, but also ensured that different aspects of governance would be scrutinized and refined under the pressure of debate. The cabinet became a crucible where ideas were tested, strategies were refined, and the complexities of wartime governance were confronted head-on. In doing so, Lincoln set a precedent for future administrations by demonstrating that strength in leadership often comes from the courage to embrace diversity in viewpoints. Through his calculated appointments and commitment to a broad-based team, Lincoln managed to transform a potentially volatile assembly into a cohesive group united by duty and a shared vision. This unification underlined his commitment to the principles of democracy and the belief that progress can be achieved only when all voices contribute to the conversation, even when they are at odds with each other. Lincoln's deliberate selection of former rivals. In an era defined by national strife and deep political divisions, Abraham Lincoln distinguished himself not only with his unwavering vision, but also with a strategic and inclusive approach to governance. One of the most remarkable aspects of his leadership was his deliberate decision to select former political rivals for key positions in his cabinet. This unexpected choice was not born out of necessity, but was a calculated move aimed at unifying a fractured political landscape and harnessing the diverse skills of individuals who had once opposed him. Lincoln recognized that political rivalry, if harnessed correctly, could serve as a powerful force for positive change. By inviting those who had been his fiercest competitors into positions of influence, he transformed potential adversaries into allies whose expertise could enrich national policy. This unorthodox approach was driven by his belief that diversity of opinion was critical during times of crisis. In an administration fraught with the pressures of civil conflict and the impending threat to national unity, Lincoln saw value in the breadth of perspectives his rivals could offer. Their different experiences and viewpoints not only challenged his own thinking, but also contributed to a more comprehensive approach to governance. The inclusion of these figures was emblematic of Lincoln's broader political philosophy, one that favored pragmatic solutions over partisan divisions. Former opponents, who had long advocated their own visions for reform and progress, were now called upon to collaborate on the monumental task of preserving the Union. Their willingness to set aside past differences in light of a common mission underscored an emerging sense of shared purpose among the leadership of the nation. Lincoln's calm but resolute nature played a pivotal role in facilitating this shift, as he extended an olive branch to those who might otherwise have remained adversaries. This gesture not only diminished internal conflicts, but also signaled to the public a commitment to putting national interest before personal grievances. Moreover, by integrating his former rivals into his administration, Lincoln demonstrated an unparalleled level of confidence in his own vision and a readiness to embrace criticism and alternative viewpoints. Each appointment served as a testament to his belief that true leadership involves the courage to forge alliances, even with those who disagree on the means to an end. This approach fostered an environment where robust debate could occur within the highest levels of government, ultimately leading to more thoughtful and balanced policy decisions during a period of profound national challenge. The strategy also had significant long-term implications for the political culture of the nation. By setting aside partisan loyalties in favor of a more inclusive governance model, Lincoln helped to pave the way for the evolution of modern political leadership. His actions challenged the prevailing norms of his time and redefined the expectations placed on elected officials. The willingness to reconcile and collaborate, even with former rivals, offered a blueprint for future leaders grappling with the complex demands of democratic governance. In doing so, Lincoln not only addressed the immediate crises of his day, but also left an enduring legacy of unity and pragmatic leadership that continues to influence the political discourse. Ultimately, Lincoln's deliberate selection of former rivals was a masterstroke of political strategy that underscored the importance of unification in times of national peril. It transformed potential conflict into constructive dialogue and demonstrated that a united front, built on mutual respect and shared commitment, is essential for any meaningful progress. Challenges in unifying strong personalities. As Abraham Lincoln assembled his diverse and talented cabinet during one of the nation's most turbulent periods, he faced the enormous challenge of unifying a group of individuals known for their strong and often conflicting personalities. In a time when political allegiance was deeply entrenched and personal ambition could easily undermine collective purpose, Lincoln's task of creating a cohesive and effective team required not only strategic insight, but also remarkable diplomatic skill. His cabinet included individuals renowned for their brilliance, expertise, and passion, qualities that, while essential to sound governance, also had the potential to lead to intense rivalry and discord. From the outset, it was clear that each member of the cabinet brought not only unique skills to the table, but also deeply held beliefs and personal ambitions that could easily conflict with the priorities of the administration. These men were not chosen for their ability to agree on every matter, but rather for their capability to challenge each other, ultimately leading to more robust and well-considered policies. However, the challenge lay in ensuring that these confrontations remained productive and did not devolve into counterproductive infighting. Lincoln understood that in order to harness the strengths of his cabinet, he had to establish a framework that promoted respectful debate while maintaining a unified front. The art of balancing authority with delegation became central to his leadership approach. One significant obstacle was the inherent pride of highly accomplished individuals who were used to operating independently and often on the front lines of policy debate. Convincing them to work as a collaborative unit required Lincoln to not only assert his vision, but also to demonstrate that unity was in the best interest of the country. He had to win over individuals who were accustomed to a certain autonomy, persuading them that their cooperation was not a concession, but rather a strategy that could amplify their own influence. This was particularly challenging when personal loyalties and regional affiliations came into play, further complicating the process of consensus building. Lincoln's approach involved cultivating an environment in which debate was encouraged, yet where the collective mission of preserving the Union and guiding the country through civil strife always remained the priority. He engaged in numerous one-on-one discussions with his cabinet members, listening to their concerns and finding common ground even on topics where opinions diverged sharply. By emphasizing the shared objective rather than individual ambitions, he managed to turn potential clashes into opportunities for innovative policy development. His ability to articulate a clear, common purpose was key to maintaining unity and ensuring that the cabinet's diverse perspectives contributed positively to decision-making. Nevertheless, even with Lincoln's thoughtful mediation and strategic communication, moments of friction were inevitable. Disagreements on matters such as military strategy, economic policy, and even the pace of social reforms occasionally escalated into heated exchanges that threatened to fracture the administration. In these instances, Lincoln's leadership was tested as he worked tirelessly to mediate disputes and prevent personal grievances from affecting the administration's overall functionality. His success in unifying these strong personalities not only underscored his exceptional leadership abilities, but also set a precedent for future administrations facing similar challenges. The balance between diplomacy and authority. Abraham Lincoln's presidency was defined by his ability to maintain a delicate balance between diplomacy and authority, a combination that proved essential in guiding a nation divided by civil strife and intense ideological conflicts. Navigating the complexities of wartime governance, Lincoln often had to temper his firm executive decisions with a willingness to listen to various perspectives and negotiate with political rivals, military commanders, and legislators. This blend of authoritative leadership and diplomatic tact enabled him to forge coalitions, secure critical support for his policies, and steer the nation through unprecedented challenges. Lincoln's approach was marked by a clear understanding that effective authority was not solely imposed by power or position, but was reinforced by an empathetic and open dialogue with those who held differing viewpoints. His style was pragmatic, drawing on personal experiences from humble beginnings and a deep-seated belief in democratic principles. While his decisions were never taken lightly, Lincoln also recognized that the success of his administration depended on his ability to build trust and consensus. This meant engaging in frank discussions with adversaries and advisors alike, often inviting criticism and debate in the spirit of finding common ground. His willingness to listen allowed him to refine policies that were not only robust in theory, but also resilient in practice. At the heart of Lincoln's leadership was his exceptional communication skill. He was able to articulate complex ideas in a straightforward manner that resonated with the general public as well as with his political peers. His addresses and public statements were imbued with a tone of humility and resolve that reassured a nervous nation and helped to consolidate support behind his vision. By clearly communicating the stakes of the ongoing conflict and the rationale behind difficult decisions, Lincoln managed to convey a sense of authority that was tempered by the recognition of the collective effort required to preserve the Union. This balance made his leadership not only effective, but also relatable to a diverse audience facing immense uncertainty. Lincoln's tenure was rife with moments that demanded swift, authoritative decisions, particularly in areas of military strategy and national security. However, even in these moments, he sought to incorporate the insights of military leaders and political allies to ensure that his commands were well informed. This consultation process was critical during battles and in the coordination of large-scale operations, where the costs of unilateral action could be catastrophic. Conversely, when situations required firm leadership, Lincoln was decisive and unyielding, setting clear objectives and maintaining strict control over the chain of command. His judicious use of executive power was balanced by his readiness to accept counsel, underscoring his belief in both the strength of his convictions and the value of collaborative effort. In achieving this blend of diplomacy and authority, Lincoln set a precedent for modern executive leadership. He demonstrated that the exercise of power could be effective without being autocratic, that decisions made in the best interest of the nation needed to be both resolute and inclusive. His legacy in striking this balance continues to serve as a reference point for leaders who face the seemingly contradictory demands of assertive governance and participatory dialogue. Ultimately, Lincoln's leadership during one of the nation's most turbulent eras revealed that true authority stems not from domination, but from the harmonious integration of decisive action with empathetic and strategic diplomacy. Chapter 4: Trials of War and Unity. As the nation plunged into the turmoil of the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln found himself at the helm of an unprecedented crisis that tested not only his political acumen, but also his capacity to forge unity in the face of profound division. The war became a crucible through which both the character of the nation and the determination of its leadership were relentlessly examined, and Lincoln emerged as a steady force, dedicated to preserving the Union against overwhelming odds. The relentless trials of battle and internal strife highlighted the complexities of managing a nation at war while also trying to bridge gaps between disparate communities and political factions. Lincoln navigated a landscape marked by rapid military developments, shifting alliances, and the ever-present threat of disintegration. His decisions during this period were driven by a deep conviction that the preservation of the nation depended not only on military victories, but also on a concerted effort to sustain the spirit of unity among citizens. The challenges he faced were monumental, balancing the imperatives of wartime strategy with the necessity of maintaining public morale, managing internal dissent, and confronting the moral quagmires posed by the institution of slavery. Each battle on the field and each contentious debate in government underscored the inherent difficulties of leading a nation at war, yet also opened opportunities for forging alliances that transcended previous rivalries. In the midst of conflict, Lincoln demonstrated an extraordinary ability to listen and adapt, often seeking the counsel of military leaders, political allies, and even former adversaries to better understand the multifaceted nature of the challenges at hand. His approach was one of pragmatic patience combined with decisive action. He understood that the resilience of the Union rested on clear, unwavering objectives, paired with a flexible execution strategy capable of responding to unexpected setbacks. As generals struggled with the vagaries of battle and the political arena simmered with dissent, Lincoln consistently emphasized the importance of a common goal, a united nation rising above sectional interests and personal ambition. The trials of war revealed a nation deeply split by ideology, but also in desperate need of reconciliation. Lincoln was acutely aware that the cost of military defeat extended beyond the battlefield, threatening to shatter the social fabric that bound Americans together. His speeches during this time resonated with themes of hope, perseverance, and an enduring belief in the promise of a more perfect union. These addresses became instrumental in shaping public opinion, striving to restore confidence among citizens battered by loss and uncertainty. By invoking the shared values upon which the nation was founded, he worked to reaffirm the commitment to democracy and freedom that had long been at the heart of the American experiment. While the challenges were severe and the journey fraught with peril, the period of war ultimately served as a proving ground for both the nation and its leader. Lincoln's insistence on unity in the midst of strife forged a legacy of resilient leadership that not only confronted immediate dangers, but also laid the foundation for a reimagined society after the conflict. His efforts during these trials underscored that, even in the darkest moments, unwavering commitment to a common purpose could pave the way for eventual renewal and reconciliation. The outbreak of the Civil War. The outbreak of the Civil War marked a turning point in American history, transforming long-standing tensions into an all-out national conflict. The convergence of simmering sectional differences, escalating political disagreements, and deep economic disparities led to an environment ripe for confrontation. In the years preceding the war, debates over slavery, state rights, and federal authority had intensified, leaving deep divisions among the population. As regional sentiments hardened, compromise became increasingly difficult, setting the stage for a conflict that would upend the country. In the northern states, the growing abolitionist movement had firmly shifted public opinion, while in the South, a powerful pro-slavery sentiment prevailed. These contrasting ideologies fueled an atmosphere of mistrust and resentment. The election of Abraham Lincoln further polarized the nation. Although Lincoln did not initially promise to abolish slavery outright, his opposition to its expansion was perceived by many in the South as a direct threat to their economic and social order. Over time, his victory symbolized a drastic shift in political priorities, causing many Southerns to feel isolated and determined to defend their way of life. As tensions reached a boiling point, the decision of Southern states to secede from the Union became inevitable. The rapid withdrawal of these states fundamentally challenged the authority of the federal government. Secessionist leaders argued that states had the sovereign right to withdraw from the Union if they believed their interests were being compromised. This argument, however, was met with strong opposition in the North, where the integrity of the Union was held as a sacred principle. The diverging interpretations of state sovereignty versus federal supremacy deepened the ideological rift, making reconciliation increasingly unlikely. The initial spark that ignited the full-scale conflict was the attack on a federal installation, which marked the definitive moment when hostilities could no longer be contained. This event was not merely a spontaneous act of aggression, but rather the culmination of years of unresolved disputes. The South's decision to take up arms represented both a desperate bid to protect their perceived rights and a deliberate challenge to federal authority. As mobilization efforts accelerated on both sides, the nation rapidly transformed from a collection of disparate regions into two distinct and hostile factions, each steadfast in its determination to prevail. In the early days of the conflict, patriotic fervor and a sense of historical destiny dominated public discourse. For many in the North, the war was seen as a necessary fight to preserve the Union and uphold democratic ideals. Conversely, in the South, the conflict was presented as a heroic struggle for independence and the preservation of a cherished cultural heritage. This dual narrative further entrenched the divide, making the prospect of compromise appear nearly impossible. The outbreak of the Civil War thus signaled not only a physical confrontation on the battlefield, but also a profound clash of ideas that would define the nation's future. The transformation of political debate into military conflict reshaped the lives of millions, setting in motion events that would reverberate for generations. Cabinet conflicts and shifting loyalties. During the tumultuous years of the Civil War, the inner workings of President Lincoln's cabinet became a microcosm of the larger national struggle, characterized by persistent conflicts and ever-evolving loyalties. The cabinet, assembled from various factions and political traditions, was a diverse group whose differing ideologies and personal ambitions often clashed. As Lincoln sought to steer the nation through war and preserve the Union, he found himself mediating disputes between colleagues whose priorities sometimes diverged sharply, revealing both the challenges and the strengths inherent in his leadership style. The early days of his administration were marred by ideological clashes within the cabinet. Long-held differences over approaches to military strategy, policy implementation, and the pace of reform ignited tensions among the members. Some cabinet members, steeped in the traditions of partisan politics, favored a more aggressive stance toward both the enemy and perceived domestic dissent, whereas others advocated for caution and the measured application of executive power. These differences were not merely technical. They were deeply rooted in personal convictions and interpretations of the Constitution, reflecting the broader national debate over the balance of power between the federal government and the states. As the war progressed, shifting political allegiances and emerging alliances further complicated the dynamics within Lincoln's cabinet. The personal ambitions of several key figures came to the forefront, with each seeking to secure their own legacy while simultaneously supporting the overall war effort. This duality fostered an environment where loyalties were constantly tested. While some members remained steadfast in their support for Lincoln's vision, others began to show signs of hesitation, questioning whether the costs of the war justified the means. Amid these tensions, Lincoln's adept handling of conflict, relying on both negotiation and decisive action, enabled him to maintain enough cohesion to press forward. His pragmatic approach involved openly addressing grievances, reshuffling responsibilities, and sometimes even sidelining contentious figures in favor of those more aligned with his strategic vision. The cabinet conflicts were not solely a result of ideological differences, but also of personal rivalries that had developed long before the war began. Many of the men serving in the cabinet had once been fierce political opponents, and their collaboration under the extraordinary circumstances of civil strife brought latent resentments to the surface. Despite this, Lincoln's insistence on a unified front sometimes required him to tolerate internal discord, viewing it as a natural byproduct of a diverse group tasked with extraordinary responsibility. In balancing these personalities, he was forced to act not just as a chief executive, but as a skilled mediator, constantly recalibrating the distribution of power within his team to align with the shifting realities on the battlefield and in public opinion. Over time, however, the cabinet evolved. The leadership learned that successful governance during crisis demanded a level of mutual respect and understanding that transcended individual ambitions. Conflicts that once threatened to fracture the administration eventually gave way to more collaborative problem-solving, as members recognized that their shared objective, the preservation of the Union, was of paramount importance. This gradual transformation underscored both the resilience of Lincoln's leadership and the dynamic nature of political loyalty, illustrating that even in an environment rife with internal strife, a common purpose could ultimately prevail. Lincoln's perseverance through national crisis. Abraham Lincoln's leadership during one of the most tumultuous periods in American history remains a testament to his unwavering determination and capacity to navigate unprecedented national crises. Faced with internal division, a brutal civil war, and immense public pressure, Lincoln demonstrated a steadfast commitment to preserving the Union, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. His perseverance was evident not just in his tactical decisions on the battlefield, but also in his moral resolve and his ability to inspire hope among a deeply fractured population. Throughout his presidency, Lincoln encountered challenges that tested his every strength as a leader. The relentless pressures of managing a nation embroiled in conflict required him to balance military strategy, political maneuvering, and public sentiment. As battle lines were drawn and casualties mounted, Lincoln remained focused on his overarching vision of unity and justice. He understood that the survival of the nation depended on more than military might. It required a deep belief in the principles of democracy and the capacity for collective renewal. His frequent trips to the front lines of public debate, even as he grappled with the pain of personal loss and national grief, underscored his commitment to addressing the crisis head-on. In moments of doubt and despair, when the country seemed on the verge of permanent disintegration, Lincoln's resolve did not waver. He was known to immerse himself in the weighty responsibilities of leadership, poring over reports and engaging in thoughtful dialogue with military commanders, advisors, and fellow citizens. Even when faced with harsh criticism from political opponents and skeptical constituents, he maintained a steady course. Lincoln believed that the challenges of his time demanded not only courageous decisions, but also patience and persistence. His ability to endure the pressures of war and political strife became a cornerstone of his legacy, offering a powerful example of determination in the face of overwhelming adversity. The president's perseverance was also reflected in his willingness to adapt. Recognizing that the methods of past administrations were inadequate for the crises at hand, Lincoln was not afraid to reform long-standing policies and introduce radical measures aimed at mending the nation's divided fabric. His decision to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, for instance, was not simply a moral choice, but also a strategic maneuver intended to weaken the Confederacy and redefine the purpose of the war. In doing so, Lincoln signaled that national survival was intertwined with the principles of liberty and human dignity. Such bold actions, taken at a time when public opinion was deeply split, further cemented his reputation as a leader who could stay the course, regardless of prevailing challenges. Even as the national crisis deepened, Lincoln's personal resilience was evident in his daily routine. He navigated the labyrinth of wartime politics with a blend of empathy, pragmatism, and unwavering focus on the common good. By continuously reaffirming his commitment to preserving the Union and fostering reconciliation, he managed to galvanize a nation battered by conflict. His perseverance through these dark times not only preserved the United States from fragmentation, but also laid the foundation for a new era of equality and justice in its aftermath. Chapter 5: The Emancipation Struggle. Abraham Lincoln's journey toward emancipating enslaved people was a battle fought on both moral and political fronts, one that evolved as a critical aspect of his presidency and reshaped the nation. The struggle over emancipation began well before his election and reflected deep-seated divisions within American society. Lincoln's stance on slavery was complex. He was not an abolitionist in the strict sense early in his career, but he recognized that the institution was incompatible with the nation's founding principles. As tensions mounted and the Civil War intensified, the moral imperative of emancipation became inextricably linked to the larger struggle to preserve the Union. His journey toward a decisive action on the matter was characterized by internal conflict, careful political maneuvering, and evolving public sentiment. The Emancipation Proclamation stands as the most significant milestone in this struggle. However, Lincoln's path to issuing it was neither direct nor universally supported. Initially, he sought to contain slavery by preventing its expansion into new territories, a pragmatic position that aimed to maintain a balance between competing interests. Over time, however, the moral and strategic imperatives of the war forced him to reconsider his approach. Emancipation was not only a deeply held moral belief, but also a tactical tool to weaken the Confederacy, which depended on enslaved labor to sustain its economic and military efforts. As the war progressed, Lincoln saw that redefining the conflict as a fight for freedom would transform its purpose and provide a rallying cry for the cause of national unity. Despite the clarity of his conviction, Lincoln faced considerable challenges. Public opinion in the North was divided, and his cabinet harbored differing views on how best to proceed. Critics argued that a radical move like emancipation would alienate border states and potentially prolong the war. Nevertheless, Lincoln remained steadfast, drawing on his personal integrity and his ability to navigate treacherous political waters. His deliberations were marked by intense consultations with military leaders, advisors, and key political figures who had long opposed his earlier, more cautious approach. Through a process of careful negotiation and reflection, Lincoln gradually shifted the discourse. His personal correspondence and speeches increasingly reflected a commitment to ending slavery, a change that resonated with many while also polarizing opponents. The decision to issue the Emancipation Proclamation ultimately was a turning point that redefined the nation's moral and political trajectory. While it did not immediately free all enslaved people, it fundamentally transformed the war into a battle for human liberty, paving the way for the eventual abolition of slavery throughout the nation. In this manner, Lincoln's struggle was not only about relinquishing an outdated institution, but also about aligning the nation's practices with its ideals. The emancipation struggle encapsulates the inherent tension between political pragmatism and moral rectitude. It illustrates how a leader faced with an overwhelming national crisis can evolve his policies in response to changing circumstances while remaining true to core ethical principles, thereby setting a precedent for future generations and reorienting the course of American history. Moral and political tensions over slavery. The national debate over slavery had long divided the United States, intertwining moral imperatives with political strategies in ways that would shape the future of the nation. At the heart of this tension lay conflicting interpretations of freedom and human dignity. For many abolitionists, slavery was a profound moral evil that violated the natural rights of human beings, creating an urgent imperative for immediate abolition. For others, particularly in the southern states, the institution of slavery was woven into the economic fabric and social identity, defended as both a necessary labor system and a cornerstone of their cultural heritage. The resulting discord was not only a battle of economics and politics, but also a struggle over the ethical foundation upon which the country was built. Politically, slavery became a potent wedge issue that exacerbated regional divides. In the North, growing industrialization and an expanding free labor market fueled the rise of anti-slavery sentiment, while Southern states relied on an agrarian economy deeply dependent on slave labor. This economic polarization fostered political alliances that crystallized around the preservation or extension of slavery into new territories and states. As the nation expanded westward, debates over whether new lands should permit slavery intensified political rivalries and altered the balance of power in Congress. The Missouri Compromise and the subsequent Kansas-Nebraska Act are examples of legislative attempts to maintain an uneasy equilibrium, yet each measure only deepened the divide, setting the stage for more dramatic confrontations. Moral arguments against slavery resonated powerfully in public discourse, drawing on foundational documents like the Declaration of Independence, which articulated ideals of equality and natural rights. Abolitionists leveraged these principles to argue that the continuation of slavery was incompatible with American ideals. In sermons, newspapers, and public debates, passionate advocates for abolition decried the hypocrisy of a nation that celebrated liberty while condoning the enslavement of millions of people. However, for many who defended slavery, these moral critiques were seen as abstract ideals that did not recognize the complexities of race, history, and economic survival in a divided nation. This conflict between ideological purity and pragmatic considerations intensified as political leaders attempted to reconcile national values with the realities of entrenched economic practices. Amid this charged atmosphere, political leaders had to navigate a path that balanced moral conviction with strategic governance. Abraham Lincoln emerged as a figure who, though personally opposed to slavery's expansion, initially adopted a cautious approach to its abolition in order to maintain unity and preserve the Union. His nuanced stance, which evolved over time into decisive action with the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation, reflected the intricate interplay between ethical ideals and political imperatives. Political tensions were further heightened by the diverging opinions of influential factions, each pressing for measures that aligned with their respective visions for the nation's future. These moral and political tensions over slavery ultimately led to a profound crisis that redefined American society, forcing the nation to confront the realities of injustice and inequality. The legacy of these debates continues to influence discussions on freedom, equality, and justice in contemporary America, serving as a reminder of the enduring struggle to reconcile the nation's lofty ideals with its complex historical realities. The drafting and reception of the Emancipation Proclamation. The journey to the formulation and eventual issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation was a complex process shaped by political deliberation, ethical debates, and the evolving realities of a nation at war. In the months leading up to its draft, President Abraham Lincoln found himself at the intersection of mounting military challenges and shifting public opinion about slavery. His personal beliefs, tempered by the political necessity of preserving the Union, gradually steered him toward an approach that would redefine the nature of the conflict. Behind closed doors, advisors and military leaders debated the timing and scope of such a decisive measure, and Lincoln weighed the potential repercussions of issuing a proclamation that would fundamentally alter both the character of the war and the social fabric of the nation. The drafting process was a delicate balancing act. Lincoln, fully aware of the volatile political climate, sought an approach that would be both morally compelling and strategically advantageous. Initially, his focus was on containing the expansion of slavery rather than immediate abolition, a stance that reflected the divided sentiment of the country. As the war progressed and military setbacks underscored the need for a renewed commitment to the cause, the president recognized that a bold, transformative step was necessary. Influenced by consultations with abolitionists, legal experts, and members of his cabinet, Lincoln's thinking evolved. He began to see emancipation not only as a moral imperative, but also as a means to destabilize the Confederacy, undermining its economic reliance on slave labor. The final draft of the proclamation was therefore carefully worded. It declared that all enslaved persons in the rebelling states were to be set free, while deliberately excluding border states and other areas still loyal to the Union to maintain a fragile political equilibrium. The reception of the Emancipation Proclamation was as varied as it was immediate. In the North, reactions were mixed. Many hailed the document as a courageous and necessary step towards fulfilling the nation's highest ideals, reinvigorating the abolitionist movement, and galvanizing support among communities long marginalized by institutional injustice. Newspapers and public speakers in northern cities seized upon the proclamation as evidence that Lincoln was willing to make tough moral decisions, even at the risk of political alienation. However, its implementation also provoked anxiety among Unionists who feared that the measure might prolong the war by antagonizing the border states. In these regions, where the institution of slavery was deeply interwoven with local economies and cultural norms, the proclamation was met with cautious approval at best and outright resistance at worst. In the South, the document was perceived as a direct provocation. Its announcement contributed to an atmosphere of defiance, with Confederate officials condemning the measure as an act of political agitation and a breach of constitutional rights. Nevertheless, the proclamation also had significant practical implications on the battlefield. For enslaved individuals, news of impending freedom spread rapidly, often leading to escapes and the disruption of Confederate labor forces. Lincoln's measure, while limited in its immediate effect, signaled a turning point that reoriented the war as a fight for human liberty rather than merely a struggle for territorial control. Ultimately, the drafting and reception of the Emancipation Proclamation encapsulated the evolving nature of a nation in crisis, a nation striving to reconcile its founding ideals with the harsh realities of civil war and the enduring struggle for justice and equality. Cabinet reactions and public response. The reaction within President Lincoln's cabinet was as diverse as it was indicative of the profound political and moral challenges facing the nation. As decisions were made that not only redefined the aims of the war, but also pushed the boundaries of traditional political norms, the members of Lincoln's inner circle voiced opinions that ranged from cautious support to outright opposition. Some in his cabinet, recognizing the necessity of bold action, saw these measures as both a moral imperative and a strategic maneuver designed to undermine the Confederacy. They believed that such decisive actions would galvanize the Union and help to transform a military struggle into a profound fight for human liberty, thus realigning the goals of the conflict with the nation's founding principles of freedom and equality. Other cabinet members, however, expressed reservations about the potential political fallout from the decisions being made. They worried that radical measures could alienate crucial segments of the electorate, particularly in the border states where public sentiment was more ambivalent toward drastic changes. These dissenting voices were not unpatriotic. Rather, they cautioned that hasty actions might inadvertently weaken the Union from within by sparking internal divisions and creating uncertainties about future policy directions. Their concerns echoed the broader debates that had long permeated Washington, reflecting the tension between maintaining political unity and embracing progressive reforms that challenged the established social order. Beyond the walls of the White House, the public response to the administration's bold policy moves was equally complex and emotionally charged. In the northern states, abolitionists and many common citizens hailed the decisions as a long overdue correction of a deep national injustice. The media in these regions, often aligned with reformist causes, portrayed the measures as a courageous stand against a moral evil and a clear demonstration of leadership, willing to sacrifice political expediency for ethical conviction. Such public sentiment brought an invigorated sense of purpose to the movement for emancipation, as communities rallied behind the idea that the nation was finally taking a definitive stand for human dignity. At the same time, segments of the population in more conservative and border areas reacted with suspicion and anxiety. For these groups, the rapid pace of change, combined with the uncertainties of war, stirred fears of disunion and economic disruption. Newspapers in these regions were often skeptical in their tone, warning that the provocative steps taken by the president could deepen sectional rifts and embolden the Confederacy. This climate of doubt was compounded by a legacy of political ambivalence on issues of race and reform, creating an environment where public opinion was not only divided along geographic lines, but also reflective of long-standing historical grievances. The dual reactions, from cautious cabinet dissenters to impassioned public supporters and skeptics alike, underscored the enormity of the challenges faced by Lincoln's administration. In reconciling these conflicting views, the president navigated a political landscape that demanded both visionary leadership and a pragmatic understanding of the country's fractured social dynamics. The interplay between cabinet debates and public sentiment not only influenced immediate policy outcomes, but also set the stage for the national discourse on freedom, equality, and the role of government in times of crisis. This period of intense reaction highlighted how deeply interwoven personal convictions, political ideology, and public perception are in shaping the course of history. Chapter 6, Mastery of Leadership. Abraham Lincoln's leadership during one of the nation's most turbulent eras is a study in the art of guiding a country through crisis with steady resolve and inspiring vision. His tenure was marked by an exceptional ability to combine decisiveness with empathy, enabling him to command respect on the battlefield and at the negotiating table. Lincoln understood that true leadership extended beyond issuing orders and making policy decisions. It involved the capacity to unite a divided nation by speaking to the hearts and minds of its people. Throughout his presidency, Lincoln demonstrated a unique blend of firmness and flexibility. He tackled the challenges posed by a fractious political landscape, the pressures of wartime decision-making, and public skepticism by actively seeking diverse perspectives. Whether engaging in intimate discussions with advisors or addressing large audiences, his communicative clarity and honesty fostered a sense of trust that bolstered national morale. His careful attention to the balance between determination and compromise allowed him to navigate shifting alliances and reconcile powerful factions with competing interests. Lincoln's strategic acumen was evident in how he harnessed the strengths of his team, even when they held conflicting viewpoints. Rather than silencing dissent, he encouraged open debate, recognizing that vigorous discussion was essential for formulating policies capable of withstanding the complexities of war. This approach not only improved the quality of decision-making, but also transformed internal conflict into a unifying force. By elevating the conversation above personal disagreements, Lincoln was able to set a collective priority, the preservation of the Union and the advancement of a just, more unified nation. Equally important was Lincoln's personal example of humility and resilience, which resonated deeply with a public beleaguered by loss and uncertainty. Despite the immense weight of responsibility, he maintained a manner that was both accessible and genuine, never allowing his position to alienate him from those he served. His willingness to accept criticism and learn from setbacks further enhanced his standing as a leader whose moral integrity was as steadfast as his resolve. This blend of personal fortitude with strategic innovation became the hallmark of his leadership style, demonstrating that true mastery involves both the heart and the mind. Ultimately, Lincoln's legacy as a masterful leader is evident in his ability to transform adversity into opportunity. His vision for a better nation, one rooted in democracy, equality, and unity, helped steer the country through its darkest days. By cultivating trust, promoting open dialogue, and remaining resolute in his convictions, he left an indelible mark on American history. His leadership not only altered the course of the Civil War, but also set a precedent for modern statesmanship, proving that principled leadership can overcome even the gravest of national crises. Lincoln's growth into a commanding leader. Abraham Lincoln's journey from a modest frontier lawyer to one of America's most commanding leaders was a transformative process marked by gradual self-education, strategic political maneuvering, and an ever-deepening commitment to the nation's ideals. In his early years, Lincoln's unpretentious beginnings and self-reliance instilled in him a determination that eventually evolved into a robust sense of leadership. At first, his approach was cautious and measured, influenced by his humble background and limited formal education. However, as he encountered the harsh realities of political life and the challenges of a nation on the brink of civil war, he recognized that his growth as a leader depended on his ability to adapt and seize opportunities that demanded both moral clarity and strategic thinking. Lincoln's ascent into a commanding figure was not the product of a single moment of inspiration, but rather a steady accumulation of experiences that tested his resolve and refined his skills. His early political career in Illinois provided him with the opportunity to build a reputation as an honest and thoughtful advocate for the common man. Through a series of hard-fought electoral campaigns and legislative battles, he learned the importance of communication, compromise, and, ultimately, decisive action. These formative experiences laid the groundwork for his later accomplishments, where he would blend a deep-rooted sense of fairness with an unwavering commitment to national unity. As national tensions mounted, the pressures of the impending Civil War forced Lincoln to make difficult decisions that rapidly accelerated his growth into a leader capable of commanding both respect and trust. His measured responses to personal tragedy and national calamity demonstrated that true leadership is forged in the crucible of adversity. Through extensive consultations with military commanders, political advisors, and even former rivals, Lincoln not only honed his strategic capabilities, but also developed a nuanced understanding of governance under extreme pressure. This period saw him transition from a reactive statesman into a proactive visionary who could galvanize a fragmented populace and inspire confidence even when victory was uncertain. Lincoln's evolution was characterized by his ability to learn from setbacks and refine his leadership style in response to changing circumstances. His reflective nature and willingness to adapt allowed him to reconcile the need for strong, decisive action with the democratic principles of debate and shared purpose. Over time, his clear communication and steadfast moral convictions transformed him into a symbol of national resilience. By balancing empathy with authority and embracing the complexities of the political landscape, Lincoln's growth into a commanding leader became apparent not only in his policies, but also in the enduring faith that countless citizens placed in his vision for the future of the United States. Managing generals and military decisions. Abraham Lincoln's presidency is often remembered as much for his political acumen as for his ability to steer military strategy during the Civil War. And this was particularly evident in his management of generals and the complex decisions on the battlefield. From the onset of the conflict, Lincoln recognized that effective leadership required more than merely issuing orders. It demanded an intricate balance of assertiveness, adaptability, and constant communication with the military leaders entrusted with the nation's defense. Lincoln's approach to managing generals was characterized by a keen understanding of human dynamics and the challenges inherent in military leadership. Early in the war, he encountered a series of generals whose differing temperaments and strategic outlooks often led to inconsistent performance on the battlefield. Faced with uncertainty and the pressures of a nation at war, Lincoln took it upon himself to sift through a succession of leadership options. seeking commanders who not only possessed tactical skill, but were also capable of working harmoniously with both political directives and a broader vision for the Union. His willingness to replace or reassign generals when necessary underscored his commitment to achieving results over preserving the status quo. Central to Lincoln's management of military decisions was his insistence on detailed communication and the continuous evaluation of strategic plans. He maintained close contact with his generals, frequently soliciting reports and feedback from the front lines to better understand the evolving nature of the conflict. This hands-on approach allowed him to make informed decisions, occasionally intervening to refine military tactics or to alter overall strategy. Lincoln was not content with passive leadership. He actively engaged in discussions regarding troop movements, supply lines, and battlefield maneuvers. His involvement often took the form of measured consultations, where he encouraged his commanders to voice their professional opinions, thereby creating a collaborative environment even under the intense pressures of war. At times, Lincoln's direct involvement in military decisions led to tensions with seasoned generals who were accustomed to operating with significant autonomy. However, his resolve to integrate political objectives with military necessities often compelled him to assert his authority in critical moments. Rather than dictating every move, he sought to inspire a shared commitment to the Union cause, emphasizing that the ultimate goal was the preservation of the nation rather than adherence to individual strategies. His ability to balance authority with diplomacy helped to forge a collective determination among military leaders, enabling them to rally behind unified plans even when the path to victory was fraught with setbacks. Throughout the conflict, Lincoln's management style evolved as he gained a deeper understanding of both the art and science of warfare. His leadership was defined by the willingness to learn from each battle, to adjust tactics in the face of unexpected challenges, and to recognize that the strength of the Union depended on more than just military might. It depended on the harmonious integration of strategic vision with effective execution. In navigating the complexities of military decision-making, Lincoln not only reinforced the cohesion of the Union forces, but also left an enduring legacy of strategic leadership during a defining chapter in American history. Navigating politics during wartime. Abraham Lincoln's presidency was defined not only by the military challenges of the Civil War, but also by the intricate political landscape that demanded constant engagement and careful strategy. In navigating politics during wartime, Lincoln had to balance the demands of maintaining national unity, managing an often fractious political arena, and ensuring that military objectives were supported by sound policy. His ability to operate on both political and military fronts under crisis conditions remains one of the most remarkable aspects of his leadership. Facing widespread dissent and competing regional interests, Lincoln employed a multifaceted approach to maintain control over the political discourse. He was acutely aware that public opinion would play a decisive role in sustaining the Union's war effort. Consequently, he used speeches and executive actions to build a narrative that championed a common national purpose, even as he dealt with the realities of a nation divided by deep-seated loyalties. By framing the conflict as not only a battle to preserve territory, but also a fight for core democratic values, Lincoln managed to engender support from a broad coalition of citizens, including those who were uncertain of the war's ultimate aim. Lincoln's political navigation was further complicated by the need to manage pressures from Congress and a series of often wavering political allies. Many politicians held divergent views on how to conduct the war, and some were more concerned with protecting their own interests than with the collective goal of national survival. In response, Lincoln demonstrated a willingness to compromise where necessary, yet he remained steadfast when strategic decisions were at stake. His interactions with Congress were marked by a firm insistence on the necessity of tough measures, combined with an openness to negotiation that helped secure the resources and legislative backing essential to continuing the war effort. This balancing act between assertiveness and conciliation allowed him to maintain a semblance of cohesion within the government during a time of extraordinary stress. Even as he managed domestic political challenges, Lincoln remained closely attuned to the military situation on the front lines. Recognizing that wartime politics and military strategy were inextricably linked, he ensured that there was a continuous flow of information between the battlefield and the halls of power. This integration enabled him to adapt policies quickly in response to shifting circumstances, whether that meant adjusting diplomatic stances, reconfiguring military appointments, or implementing new measures to bolster public morale. His commitment to informed decision-making underscored the importance of having a deep understanding of both political and military realities. In the end, Lincoln's remarkable ability to navigate politics during wartime helped to steer the nation through its darkest hours. By uniting conflicting factions under a banner of shared purpose, he created the political environment necessary to support decisive military action and paved the way for the eventual restoration of the Union. His leadership during this tumultuous period continues to serve as a profound example of how political acumen, when combined with moral conviction, can reshape a nation in crisis. Chapter 7: Legacy of the Unifier. Abraham Lincoln's enduring legacy as the unifier is a testament to his ability to steer a deeply divided nation toward a common purpose despite overwhelming odds. His leadership during the Civil War, marked by steadfast moral conviction and a willingness to make tough decisions, ultimately redefined the identity and future of the United States. Lincoln's vision was one that transcended partisan politics and regional differences, forging a national spirit that embraced the ideals of liberty, equality, and unity, even in the face of intense internal strife. His efforts to bring together former adversaries and heal the wounds of a fractured nation set the standard for modern leadership and remain influential in the continuous quest for national reconciliation. Lincoln's presidency was characterized by a series of bold and sometimes controversial decisions designed to preserve the Union. His commitment to freeing enslaved people transformed the nature of the conflict, reorienting the war as not only a battle for territorial survival, but also a struggle for human rights and dignity. By prioritizing the emancipation of millions of enslaved individuals, Lincoln redefined the moral framework of the nation, aligning its practices with the founding principles of freedom and justice. This moral reawakening, however, did not come without cost. His leadership faced intense scrutiny and political opposition, yet he persisted in the belief that maintaining the integrity of the nation depended on addressing the systemic injustices that had long divided its people. The legacy of Lincoln as a unifier extends beyond the military and moral dimensions of his presidency. His skill in navigating complex political landscapes by forging alliances across ideological divides demonstrated the strength that can be achieved through empathy and mutual respect. Lincoln's approach to leadership was not characterized by an authoritarian imposition of will, but by fostering an environment in which diverse voices could contribute to a larger vision of national progress. He understood that true unity could only be achieved when every citizen felt that their voice was acknowledged and that their concerns were part of the national conversation. In doing so, Lincoln not only preserved the Union, but also established a framework for rebuilding the nation in the aftermath of conflict. Today, the unifying legacy of Abraham Lincoln continues to serve as an inspiration. His example is frequently cited in discussions on leadership during crises, highlighting the importance of vision, perseverance, and the courage to make decisions that embody the highest ethical standards. the memory of his presidency endures as a guiding light for current and future leaders tasked with mending divisions and fostering a common purpose among diverse groups. In essence, Lincoln's legacy as the unifier is not confined to the historical record, but persists in the continued efforts to build a society that reflects the ideals he championed throughout his life. The re-election and the final months. Abraham Lincoln's re-election campaign and his final months in office were characterized by both triumph and deep-seated challenges that underscored the immense pressures of wartime leadership. As the Civil War dragged on with no clear end in sight, Lincoln faced a battlefield that extended far beyond the military front lines. The re-election campaign was not only a test of his political acumen, but also a reflection of the nation's need for steady leadership during a period of unprecedented crisis. Voters in the northern states, wearied by the prolonged conflict and the losses incurred, placed their hope in a leader who had proven his commitment to preserving the Union and who was willing to take decisive steps to end the war. His campaign capitalized on the momentum of his earlier successes and the moral clarity demonstrated by key initiatives such as emancipation, which had reoriented the war into a struggle for human freedom. Despite fierce opposition and uncertainties about the war's outcome, Lincoln managed to secure his re-election by appealing to both reason and emotion. His supporters were inspired by his steadfastness and his willingness to confront the moral dilemmas that defined the era. Campaign speeches and public addresses during this period emphasized the importance of unity and perseverance, aiming to remind a beleaguered citizenry of the greater purpose behind the sacrifices being made. This effective communication helped to assuage fears among the electorate, even as critics questioned the long-term strategy and pointed to persistent military setbacks. In the political arena, his re-election represented a rebuke to those who advocated for a negotiated peace that would have compromised the Union's fundamental principles. Following his victory, Lincoln faced the daunting task of steering the nation through its final moments of war while simultaneously laying the groundwork for post-war reconstruction. In the final months of his presidency, he continued to work tirelessly, engaging directly with military leaders and political allies to ensure that the Union's struggle was not in vain. The stress of these responsibilities, compounded by personal losses and the ever-present specter of further bloodshed, weighed heavily on him. Yet, Lincoln's resolve remained unshaken. He focused on reestablishing national order and setting the conditions for a lasting peace. During this critical period, his efforts to mend the fractured nation took on a personal dimension, as he expressed concern for the future of a reunited country. He made tentative moves toward reconciliation, demonstrating an understanding that enduring unity required not only military victory, but also healing the deep-seated wounds inflicted by years of conflict. Even as the nation braced for the long, arduous process of Reconstruction, Lincoln's final months were marked by a commitment to justice, forgiveness, and the hope of a more equitable future. His persistent dedication during these final months underscored the complex interplay between leadership, sacrifice, and the enduring belief in the promise of a united, democratic nation. Impact on the cabinet and the nation. Abraham Lincoln's transformative leadership during the Civil War left an indelible mark not only on his cabinet, but on the nation as a whole. The decisions made in the White House reverberated throughout the corridors of government and across a divided country, influencing both immediate wartime strategy and the future trajectory of American democracy. Lincoln's insistence on including a broad spectrum of voices, even those of his political adversaries, created an environment in which vigorous debate and dissent could eventually lead to stronger, well-rounded policy decisions. The dynamics within his cabinet, characterized by both collaboration and conflict, served as a microcosm of the broader challenges facing the nation during one of its most perilous periods. Within the cabinet, Lincoln's leadership style fostered a culture of accountability and openness that helped to navigate the complexities of wartime governance. His deliberate choice to surround himself with men of varying opinions challenged the narrow confines of partisan loyalty and underscored a commitment to national interest above individual ambition. As intense disagreements arose over military strategy, domestic policies, and the timing of reforms, these conflicts forced the cabinet to continuously reassess and adapt. This process not only tested the mettle of each member, but also contributed to the development of policies that were better suited to the unpredictable challenges of the Civil War. Ultimately, the internal evolution of the cabinet under Lincoln's guidance played a critical role in stabilizing the Union's leadership apparatus and securing a unified front in the face of external aggression. Beyond the confines of the White House, Lincoln's policies reshaped the nation and set the stage for a profound transformation in American society. His bold actions, particularly those concerning emancipation and the preservation of the Union, redefined the ethical and political landscape. The nation witnessed a shift as traditional allegiances gave way to a renewed focus on the collective good, with citizens coming to see the conflict not solely as a struggle over territory, but as a battle for the very principles upon which the nation was founded. The moral clarity of his decisions inspired public debates, altered the course of the abolitionist movement, and reoriented the country's understanding of liberty and justice. In the years following the war, the impact of Lincoln's cabinet reforms and wartime decisions continued to influence the process of national reconstruction and reconciliation. The strategies developed in those dark years laid the groundwork for rebuilding a society fractured by conflict. His legacy, forged in the crucible of war, became a touchstone for the development of modern American political leadership, emphasizing the importance of unity, adaptability, and shared responsibility. Thus, the lasting impact on both the cabinet and the nation stands as a testament to the enduring power of principled leadership in the face of unprecedented division and strife. Lincoln's assassination and enduring influence. The sudden assassination of Abraham Lincoln on April 15, 1865, brought an abrupt and profound end to the life of a leader whose vision had steered the nation through its most trying period. Lincoln's untimely death, occurring just days after the Confederate surrender, shocked a nation already scarred by the bitterness of civil war. The loss was felt deeply by a country that had come to rely on his steady hand, his moral fortitude, and his commitment to the principles of liberty and equality. His assassination transformed the mourning of a divided populace into a collective moment of national grief, where political differences subsided in the face of personal loss and the realization that a brilliant mind was no longer there to guide the country through reconstruction and reconciliation. Even in death, Lincoln's influence quickly became apparent as his legacy began to serve as a unifying symbol for the nation. The tragic end to his life catalyzed a renewed determination among political leaders and ordinary citizens alike to honor the principles for which he had stood. His call for unity, embodied in his Preserve the Union during the war, continued to resonate, shaping national discourse in the challenging years that followed. In the immediate aftermath of his assassination, the process of national healing was both a tribute to his leadership and a testament to the enduring appeal of his vision. The mourning period fostered a sense of common purpose and spurred initiatives aimed at reconciling a fractured society, even as the wounds of war were still fresh. Lincoln's enduring influence is observed not only in the post-war era, but also in the continued evolution of American political thought. His strategies for managing complex crises, his ability to forge a broad coalition from disparate factions, and his dedication to principles of justice and equality became touchstones for subsequent generations of leaders. Throughout the 20th century and into the present day, his example has been cited as an embodiment of the highest ideals of American democracy. Public officials, scholars, and citizens have looked to his life as both a historical benchmark and a source of inspiration for addressing contemporary issues of division, injustice, and the need for national unity. Moreover, Lincoln's legacy has been cemented in cultural memory, with commemorations, memorials, and continued scholarly interest ensuring that his contributions remain a vibrant part of American heritage. His writings, speeches, and policies continue to be analyzed and revered as enduring works of leadership and moral guidance. The impact of his assassination, though tragic, further elevated his mythic status, transforming him into an icon of national sacrifice whose ideals continue to shape the nation's quest for a more perfect union. In this way, the legacy of Lincoln endures, serving as a beacon for leadership in times of crisis and a reminder of the enduring power of vision and resolve in overcoming even the most profound national challenges. You've been listening to A Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln, written by Harry Montgomery, narrated by Cedar Reyes,